Negroid is a term that is used by some forensic and physical anthropologists to refer to individuals and populations that share certain morphological and skeletal traits that are frequent among most populations in Sub-Saharan Africa. The term is commonly associated with notions of racial typology which are disputed by a majority of anthropologists. For modern usage it is associated with racial notions, and is discouraged, as it is potentially offensive. First introduced in early racial science and anthropometry, the taxon has traditionally been used to denote one of the three proposed major races of humankind. Negroid as a biological classification remains in use, particularly within the field of forensic anthropology. The word is formed by the base negro, and the suffix oid, which means resembling. Etymology, Negroid has both Greek and Latin etymological roots. It literally translates as black resemblance from Negro Niger, and oida s, equivalent to oo plus oida s having the form of, derivative of a registered trademark DOS form. The earliest recorded use of the term Negroid came in 1859. In modern usage, it is associated with populations that on the whole possess the suite of typical Negroid physical characteristics. Subraces. In the 19th century, Samuel George Morton posited a Negro family, which he grouped with the Caffreyan, Hottentot, Oceanic Negro, Australian and Alforian families. In the first half of the 20th century, the traditional Subraces of the Negroid race were regarded as being the Sudanic, the Bantu, the Nilote, the Pygmy, and the Khoisan. By the 1960s, some scholars regarded the Khoisan as a separate race known as the Capoid race, while others continued to regard them as a Negroid subrace. Congoid was frequently used interchangeably with Negroid, with the main difference being that Congoid excluded the Capoid taxon. Use in physical anthropology. In physical anthropology the term is one of the three general racial classifications of humans: a Euro-Caucasoid, Mongoloid and Negroid. Under this classification scheme, humans are divisible into broad subgroups based on phenotypic characteristics such as cranial and skeletal morphology. Later extensions of the terminology, such as Carlton S. Kuhn's Origin of Races, place this theory in an evolutionary context. Kuhn divided the species Homo sapiens into 5 groups: Caucasoid, Capoid, Congoid, Australoid and Mongoloid, based on the timing of each taxon's evolution from Homo erectus. Positing the Capoid race as a separate racial entity, and labeling the two major divisions of what he called the Congoid race as being the African Negroes, and the Pygmies, he divided indigenous Africans into these two distinct groups based on their date of origin, and loosened classification from mere appearance. However, this led to disagreement between approaches to dating divergence, and consequent conflicting results. Cavalli-Sforza also accepts this twofold division, pointing out that the Pygmies have a very different genetic signature than other black Africans, so they must have originally had their own now unknown language, but have since adopted the language of the Bantu peoples around them. Cavalli-Sforza does not accept as Kuhn did that each race evolved separately. He accepts the currently dominant paradigm, the out-of-Africa theory, that is that all human beings are descended from small bands of people that migrated out of Africa beginning 125,000 to 60,000 years ago. Physical features, craniofacial traits. In modern craniofacial anthropometry, Negroid describes features that typify skulls of black people. These include a broad and round nasal cavity, no dam or nasal sill, Quonset heart-shaped nasal bones, notable facial projection in the jaw and mouth area, a rectangular-shaped palate, a square or rectangular eye orbit shape, and large, megadontic teeth. Many of these craniofacial traits are also common among Australoid populations. For this reason, Australoid skulls when found are in some instances misidentified as Negroid in craniofacial anthropology, as in the case of the Luzia woman specimen of Brazil. However, since these craniofacial traits are themselves believed to be plesiomorphic or archaic retentions that date back to the original dispersal of the Homo genus during the early Pleistocene, their persistence in both modern populations is thought to be due to each independently adhering to similar subsistence lifestyles in similar environments. Although still widely used internationally in the identification of human remains, some have challenged the accuracy of craniofacial anthropometry vis-à-vis different human populations that have developed in close proximity to one another and those of mixed ethnic heritage. Neoteny, Ashley Montague lists neotenous structural traits in which Negroids generally differ from Caucasoids. Flattish nose, flat root of the nose, narrower ears, narrower joints, frontal skull eminences, later closure of premaxillary sutures, less hairy, longer eyelashes, and cruciform pattern of second and third molars. He also suggested that in the extinct Negroid group termed the Boscapoids, pedomorphic traits proceeded further than in other Negroids. Additionally, Montague wrote that the Boscapoids had larger brains than modern humans and the projection of their mouth was less than in other Negroids. He believed that the Boscapoids were the ancestors of the Bushmen. Hair texture. Afro-textured hair is tightly coiled, kinky hair. It is a ubiquitous trait among Negroid populations. By consequence, the presence of looser, frizzly hair texture in other populations has often been considered an indication of possible admixture with Negroid peoples. Skin pigmentation. Skin pigmentation in Negroid populations varies from very dark brown to light brown. As dark skin is also relatively common in human groups that have historically not been defined as Negroid, including many populations in both Africa and Asia, it is only when present with other typical Negroid physical traits such as broad facial features, Negroid cranial and dental characteristics, pranthism, afro-textured hair and neoteny, that it has been used in Negroid classification. Populations with frequently dark skin yet on the whole lacking the suite of Negroid physical traits were thus usually not regarded as Negroid, but instead as either dark Caucasoid, or Australoid depending on their other salient physical attributes. By contrast, populations with relatively light skin yet generally possessing typical Negroid physical characteristics, such as the Khoisan, were still regarded as Negroid. Criticism. The term Negroid is still used in certain disciplines such as forensic and physical anthropology. In a medical context, some scholars have recommended that the term Negroid be avoided in scientific writings because of its association with racism and race science. This mirrors the decline in usage of the term Negro, which fell out of favor following the campaigns of the American civil rights movement. The term Negro became associated with periods of legalized discrimination, and was rejected by African Americans during the 1960s for black. C.S. Kuhn's evolutionary approach was criticized on the basis that such sorting criteria do not produce meaningful results, and that evolutionary divergence was extremely improbable over the given time frames. As Montague said, see also, Black people, Australoid race, Capoid race, Caucasoid race, Mongoloid race, references.